When I started, I was 29, and whether I just picked a number, but I said by the time I was 40, I wanted to have sold the business. Um, so it was always like pretty much from day one, it was always a plan and an ambition to sell the business when I was 40. And as it happened, I missed out by 30 days.
This is the We Built This Business podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Osullivan. This is the podcast for UK business owners to share their journey, their knowledge, their sacrifices, and their successes. This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. Hello, welcome to the We Built This Business podcast. So today our guest is David Lynch. David started the Lynch Healthcare Group from a spare bedroom in 2009 and became a global manufacturing exporter that he successfully exited in 2020. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, really looking forward to this. And we've had some good chats in the past, so it's good for me to get to know you as well at the same time.
Definitely. And also, I've been on your YouTube channel, which is the David Lynch Entrepreneur. You're a very busy guy. I love the channel. Can you tell us a bit kind of what you're up to, obviously, as well as what's going on with the YouTube channel?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's been just over 3 years since I sold and exited the healthcare group. So those 3 years, I've kind of, done a lot of personal development work. I've enjoyed life. I haven't worked too hard. So I said 2024 is going to be the year where I'm going to go again. And I'm really excited about what's to come in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. I've got a good plan, and I'm re-energized, and I'm looking forward to starting that.
Brilliant. So I recently see that you're over in Dubai. Was that a family trip or a business trip?
Yeah, a little bit of both. It was 5 weeks. So I started the trip with an M&A in-person seminar, and that was with a business buy-in community that I'm part of. So that was a brilliant way to start the trip. And then my wife and kids came out for 4 weeks after that. So we just had a really good time together. And to be honest with you, after we sold, we had COVID, or we're in the middle of COVID. So we never really got a chance to spend any time outside of the UK. So yeah, brilliant. Love Dubai. I've set up there a residency, and it's something that we kind of got half an eye on going forward.
Obviously, you said about the business buying group. Is that what you're primarily looking at the moment? Is it purchasing other businesses?
Yeah, that's my main focus. Obviously, the first time it was all organic growth, and really I didn't know much about the mergers and acquisition side, and I just thought it was for these huge companies and companies you see on the TV. So yeah, since I've sold, I've done a lot of education and built up a lot of good networks in that space.
I guess we'll hear a little bit more about that later on. But if we go back to the beginning now of where David started, so this is back to 2009. What inspired you to start the Lynch Healthcare Group, and what did it do?
The Lynch Healthcare Group were a supplier, a manufacturer, the maintenance of disability. So disability products, mobility products, rehab products. And yeah, that was started in 2009. And, I think at the core of all of that, it's changing people's lives. I was involved in that sector, and I really enjoyed making a big difference to other people. And I guess that theme's kind of continued. after I sold my business, and even before I was doing a bit of mentoring. So that changing people's lives is sort of at the core of what I really love and enjoy doing.
Fantastic. So the part that the Lynch Healthcare Group was involved in, what was it? I've seen from online. Was it to do with creating casts, bandages, manufacturing of that side of the healthcare area?
Yeah, it's more specialised. We used to focus on two key areas. The first is the moving and handling of people. So the providing equipment mainly in the community, although a lot of our contracts were actually with the NHS. It was keeping people in their own homes. So we would install and maintain the equipment, and the carers would go in and manage and work with the individuals. So patient handling, people handling. The other area was showering and bathing. So anything around the personal care element of making sure that the hygiene, providing equipment for the hygiene side of people's lives. So it was critical equipment. If the equipment didn't work, people couldn't get out of bed and couldn't enjoy and go about their daily lives.
Absolutely, really, really important. And obviously, I can only imagine the scope of that area as well, with an aging population and the number of people that we need to assist as we're going through the baby boomer era as well. In the beginning of, you mentioned the NHS. How did you get your first customer?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting little story. It wasn't an NHS customer. It was actually a guy that I used to do a bit of work for and provide some like assessments. He ran a day centre, so he ran a centre where people would come and it would give them all sorts of opportunities in life. That day centre actually it just had a flood, so he needed equipment and he needed equipment fast. So that was our first like order. Circumstances you could argue was a bit of luck, but we provided all of that equipment. We commissioned it. We did training with the staff, and yeah, I always remember that as our first order, and I still actually keep in touch with that same guy today.
So it's a necessity. But how did this guy already know you? Is that how, and did he know what you were kind of setting up in, or did you contact them, as like a cold email, a cold call, or?
Yeah, no, I used to work in the industry before I had my own company, so he knew what my area, he knew my areas was the moving and handling side. And yeah, he just contacted us and said, look, I've heard you set up on your own, and actually we've got a problem that needs solving. Can you come down and have a look?
It's always interesting to hear how you get your first customer, isn't it? Because when you think back to all those customers you've served since, and then you
Yeah,
speak about that first one, everyone always still remembers that first one like it was yesterday.
yeah. It went from that to providing sort of UK coverage and having NHS and local authority contracts across the country. So yeah, you've got to start somewhere and grow from there.
What year was it that you rolled out to UK coverage?
Oh, so 2009 was started. I think we won our first NHS contract in 2011, and we won three or four in the northeast of England where we were based. Our first one outside of the area, I think, was we did Derbyshire, Nottingham, and we won a really big one in Leicestershire to cover the full of Leicestershire. Then we won Cambridge, Northampton.
What were the challenges that came in as a result of trying to, expand your operation not just to that area but to the UK?
Logistically, there was challenges. There was people challenges, a lot of people challenges because we had to have people in those areas. And yeah, operationally was very difficult because I wasn't the best when it comes to organizational systems and processes. So, multiple challenges in terms of getting set up. We, as part of those contracts, we had to offer 24/7 coverage. So if something broke down, we had to be there within an hour. We had to be there within, well, sometimes less than an hour. As you can imagine, there was a lot of logistical challenges that went to provide that level of service, which was in the service level agreements.
And how did you navigate that? Did you have, like regional coordinators, or what was the solution you found?
Well, it was made up of engineers, and very good experienced engineers. So they would be in different locations, but we managed the stock, we managed the finances, we managed the sales and marketing, all from the northeast at our main office in Sunderland. But the engineers were remote and had little bases where they would work out of. It was good in that respect. We kept all of the main operations up in the northeast, but we managed to roll it out all the way down to London. I can't take all of the credit, if any. I brought in some fantastic people that delivered the operational side, where my forte was winning the contracts and making sure we kept the contracts, but delivering the contracts, that wasn't my area of expertise.
Yeah. So you were effectively the sales side of it, which was driving the business, and then you were getting the right people in to look after, would you say, the areas that you weren't as strong in, just from the comments previously?
It was, I think I mentioned this the other day to somebody else. It was very chaotic when I was involved, because I would bend over backwards for the customer and help. They might need to get a patient out of hospital like tomorrow, and I was always the one that says, yes, we can find a way of doing that. And then I would make a few calls and cause a bit of chaos, but ultimately we always delivered, and that was the good thing. We had people in the business that they were doers, they were problem solvers, and that culture went across the business, which was a culture that I installed. How they delivered on that and how they did it in a systematic way wasn't down to me, it was down to them.
Yeah. You employed the right people, essentially. Talking about people, did you have many people struggles?
Yes, lots. I always remember, I think it was a year into the business, and I think I only had two engineers, and one of them decided to go and work for a competitor. I was on holiday at the time, and he handed his notice in and he left. So he left us with one engineers with lots of work to be done, and that was, I could fill this podcast with stories such as that, but and I wasn't a very good people manager, so that didn't help. I realised I needed people to be able to work with our staff and lead the staff on a day-to-day basis and manage the staff better than I could. I identified that pretty early, and I'm always the first to say that I wasn't a very good people manager.
They say business is easy without people, isn't it? That's the problem. Yeah. It's the people that make it difficult. Unfortunately, you do need them. What stage you then moved into becoming a manufacturer? Obviously, originally exiting with being a global manufacturer. But when did that shift start, and how did that kind of come around?
Yeah, well, with the manufacturing, we realised to get the business to the next level, we needed to increase our margins, we needed to increase our coverage and the opportunities, and because we'd already won numerous NHS contracts, we had an opportunity where we were in the door. We had an opportunity to provide other products it was a good time to really start producing our own products and increasing our margins. We had two main product lines. The slings, which is the textile based product that lifts the person in the hoist, and the shower chairs, the shower and bathing chairs that basically covered the hygiene aspect. So yeah, we needed to increase, we wanted to increase our margins. We knew if we were going to get to the end goal, we knew we needed to have better margins in the business. But I would also say we needed more control over our own destiny and who our customers were. And because we put a lot of emphasis on our levels of service, we needed to make sure we had as much control over that as possible. So, we could deliver. So we had a team in-house that was producing the slings, and that just gave us the control of being able to offer a more specialist service, but to be able to deliver when we say we're going to be able to deliver. The manufacturing was that next step. It was UK coverage, win contracts, and then offer more products and services to those existing contracts. So that was like the manufacturing was the second phase of our growth.
And the manufacturing, was it set up in the UK or was it abroad?
Yeah, it was. We expanded our offices in our factory space in Sunderland. We recruited really good people again that had a lot of experience within textile manufacturing.
I see, and that makes a massive difference to be able to control, like you say, your own product, because the problem with outsourcing or relying on others is that if they make an error or make a mistake, that falls straight on you. So if you can control it in-house and also make a bigger margin at the same time, it really adds value to that business. And I imagine that manufacturing isn't the easiest thing in the world to just change from being a service provider to an actual manufacturer. So how did you just build that up? Did it take a long time?
Yeah, I would say especially in the healthcare space as well, because these products were class 1 medical devices. Being a class 1 medical device, you can imagine there's a lot of process, and there's a lot of regulations.
Regulation?
Yeah. There's lots of regulations around it. Again, I had to bring people into the business that were capable of doing that. And to be honest, our operations and finance director took care a lot of the manufacturing side, where I could focus on, okay, we've got our own products now. How can we expand our sales? When we started, I didn't have anybody that ran a manufacturing facility before, so we started very basic and old school. We used to do all of the cutting of the products manually, and then over time we started to advance that with technology.
And obviously going into almost like a regulated manufacturing business as well, it makes it a higher barrier to entry, doesn't it? So your competitors, if it's not easy, they're not going to easily get into it, which adds, I can imagine, a lot of value to the overall service and product that you're offering. And you talked about getting more customers. Is that when you started looking at going into the e-commerce side of the business?
Yeah, so all of work to date was with sort of local authorities, NHS, local councils, and there was a big, and there still is a big emerging market in the private sector. NHS waiting lists were getting bigger. Criteria for what people could get from the NHS was getting lower and tighter. We saw a big opportunity to house a lot of these products and sell a lot of these products online, whether that was the people that were buying them direct, or often or not their family members that were buying the products. we went about creating an online platform and started to selling to the individuals rather than the NHS. Obviously, we still kept our NHS local authority work was still our biggest area, but we started to produce e-commerce sales, which was a brand new understanding for me in terms of how to market. But it was very enjoyable. It was very different. I think we only had like 3 years of doing that. So when we got acquired, the company that acquired us didn't really take that side of it on. So it started to get traction, but we never really sort of achieved what we wanted to set out with that. Maybe that's something for the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, e-commerce is massive, and like you said, as the NHS kind of pulls back a little bit on, well, not a little bit, quite a lot on what it offers, there's going to be an area for private business to market its services where people will go direct, and instead of previously waiting, they will pick up their own products and almost provide a little bit of their own assistance.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest challenges I imagine from e-commerce is going from zero as well, isn't it? Because I imagine, again, similar to manufacturing, you didn't have an e-commerce team just sat there waiting to go. So how did you get your customers online, or how did they suddenly start finding your I'm assuming your website?
One of the guys who worked within our sales and engineering team had a passion for e-commerce, so he moved over to this side of the business. We developed the website from scratch. We invested quite a lot of money in that website because we wanted it to be scalable. We had various rounds of funding in the business, and one of the rounds of funding helped fund the website, the platform that the e-commerce was built on. But of course, it's no good just having a really good e-commerce website. You need to then put the time and the money into the marketing, learning the SEO side, a lot of investment in Google and Google AdWords and paid advertising. But again, there was some good people that knew more than me, but I actually really enjoyed like learning about that. There was some good. I'll mention the Entrepreneurs Forum here in the Northeast. There was an e-commerce specific group of people that had regular meetups, so you could tap into knowledge of other businesses that maybe sold workwear, furniture. So, like anything, I always build a really good network, a really good support network around me, and got some good mentors, got some good people that were growing the business at different stages. We just kind of worked it and figured it out as we went along.
Yeah, I mean, networking is hugely powerful. And you mentioned mentorship as well, and that's one of the big things that I like to focus on, because I think when people start a business, they don't necessarily realize the power of a mentor. Did you have numerous mentors through your journey, or did you kind of just have people that you, through your network, called on when you needed them?
Yeah, so I started, again, through the Entrepreneurs Forum, I started to get different mentors for different scenarios at different times of the business. So I had somebody that helped us with the finance raising. I had somebody that was really good at e-commerce. I would go out and search for people that had a specific area of expertise. And then I would say towards the end, I had one or two people that I was really close to, and that just helped me through all of the challenges in the lead up to selling the company, and a little bit during the process as well. And they would help with all elements of that. So I always say it's vitally important that as an entrepreneur, you do invest the time and sometimes a bit of money in finding the right people, that have been there and done it and can accelerate your journey and learn from their mistakes instead of making the same mistakes yourself.
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know, do you? And if you've got someone who's, like you said, you're going into e-commerce and you go, well, let's try this. And someone can say, hang on a minute, I did that. That didn't work. Maybe I would recommend, getting a PPC expert, get an SEO expert before you even start this process. And you'll be already 2-3 years ahead of where you would be if you just dived in and didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah, it wasn't until I sold the business and I sat back and I started thinking about it and I started helping a few other entrepreneurs. It wasn't until that point I realized how much I actually learned through the whole process. And I don't think I ever appreciated how much we achieved until I had that time to reflect.
I imagine it was, so I'm just looking at the exit date here. So it was October 2020. So in theory, COVID's lockdown was pretty much coming back into force. So I can't remember which one it was, probably number 3, I think, by that stage. So you had not only the business being sold, but also then you had time at, really time at home to sit and not do too much. But yeah, I guess talking about that exit, how did the exit come about? Is it something you wanted from the beginning? Is it something that just happened and it wasn't expected?
Yeah. So my little fun fact, people have probably heard this, is like I started 2009 in a recession and sold it 2020 in a pandemic. And I think that's just typical of me. I tend not to do things the easy way. But yeah, when I started, I was 29 and whether I just picked a number, but I said by the time I was 40, I wanted to have sold the business. So it was always like pretty much from day one, it was always a plan and an ambition to sell the business when I was 40. And as it happened, I missed out by 30 days.
That's not too bad. Amazing. I mean, there is that whole vision part, isn't there? The fact that, if you visualized it from day one, that's what you were going to do.
Yeah.
You do more often than not end up actually doing that if you believe in it in the beginning. And so with the exit, did they, was it something that you were being approached by, or were they always on the table over the last kind of couple of years beforehand, or was it out of the blue?
So I mean, the 3 years before I sold, I knew I had to have various things in place, like a good management team, like systems and processes. So I sort of knew 3 years ago that I started to put these things in place. I always had one eye on who was going to buy it. And I guess, if I'm honest, a lot of our marketing and a lot of the way we portrayed ourselves was we always had one eye on not just attracting customers, but attracting buyers. I would say maybe 2 years before we sold, we started to have conversations with some companies and some people, and we probably had 3 or 4 approaches before we actually settled with the company that ended up buying us. Had a little bit of experience, had to really try and understand the process, but ultimately when the organisation that came in, we just knew it was the right one and the right time for us as well.
I mean, it's a partnership, isn't it? Because when you go through that journey of selling, it's not just like you're buying something from a supermarket. It is a lot of negotiation and a lot of handing over. Did you stay in the business at all? Did you stay on as a consultant or anything along those lines?
So that was, I didn't want to stay in the business and I didn't want to work in the business. That was always a big part of my plan, was to get the business so that it didn't need me, which was a big challenge, but I did achieve that. I exited the business on day one, and I worked like a 12-month consultancy agreement, which I was just there to help the business. And predominantly a lot of that work was just helping them with tenders and renewing contracts, helping them win a few other contracts. But ultimately, I was out of the business on the Friday when we sold. I didn't go back.
You basically built to sell, didn't you? Essentially, that was the way. Like you said, from 3 years before, you were already preparing it. The one thing you want at that time of sale is choice, and you had 3 or 4 options already on the table, pretty much. So that is the goal, isn't it, for a lot of entrepreneurs? The way to exit a business is through the sales price, because then you get one big payout instead of constantly growing through organic every year. I was just did you get any seller's remorse? You said you didn't go back. I'm thinking from my own personal side of things. I feel like I missed the team.
No. I mean, being honest, I've been in the industry for probably 15, 16 years, and like I was just at the point where I needed a change. I needed a fresh start. No, and I would say, and I always say to people, it was the best thing I ever done, because you don't realize how much of your life you dedicate to your business. And when I sold, it was just amazing to be able to do what I wanted whenever I wanted. And I made a if we touch on what's next, I made a sort of promise that I would not get involved in any business, like in the day-to-day of the business again, because I can now definitely add a lot of value to businesses, but at the higher level, the more strategic level. So no, answer your question, no regrets.
Perfect. Well, that's the best way to be, definitely. And you've touched on the whole, I think, kind of the mental side of running a business. It's non-stop, isn't it? It just does not stop. You close your eyes, you're thinking about it. You wake up in the middle of the night, you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
How did you kind of deal with those pressures yourself? Was there any kind of coping mechanisms? Just thinking, obviously, other people that are in that position.
Yeah, I did a lot of work. I'm very, very into self-education. I did a lot of work on myself and managing my emotions. And I think that was the biggest game changer for me. I used to get, when I say emotional, I don't mean, I used to get, the business was my baby, and I think I took things too personal in the early days. So as time went on, I learned how to deal with emotions, and I learned how to take a step back and just let it be, and sort of like, now I'm a massive believer that things happen for a reason, and I tend to just let things take the course now, where I think before I would always try and fight against something I didn't want to happen or didn't agree with. I'd fight it, but that isn't the best use of one's time.
It's hard though, isn't it? But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. As in, when you're passionate about something, especially your own business, you want it to be perfect every time. You don't want to take any shortcuts. You don't want things not to go right. But it is understanding the fact that you cannot solve everything sometimes, and you have to let things go in order to grow the business, or just as a person to be able to enjoy family life outside of it, because otherwise it is just all encompassing 24 hours a day. Obviously now we've sold the business. You're in the middle of a pandemic. You've got some time to yourself. What then happens? You're obviously in the acquisition space now. Talk us through what's happened since 2021.
Yeah, so as I said, I did a lot more education. I did some courses. I joined a lot of groups. I got myself a mentor. who was very, very successful in this space. He'd done over 100 acquisitions in, I think, about 12 years, maybe a little bit longer. I'd done the education, I got myself a mentor, and I just got started. And being part of my mentor's organization allowed me to really learn how to do deals, how to source off-market opportunities, how to have the conversation with the business owners, how to structure deals, and how to get deals from start to finish. And obviously, I had a little bit of experience being on the other side of the table, so I know what it's like. I know what it feels like. So I was able to use that experience to build up some rapport with the seller, but also help me, take a business from heads of terms all the way through the process, through due diligence to completion.
And you had the time, and like you said, you invested in the training. Looking at your original business journey and where you are now, would you, if you were starting again and you know what you do, you know what you know now, would you ever start a business from scratch again?
No, definitely not. It's very hard, and I've been in that position. I know a lot of other people in that position, and I just think it's such a hard way to earn money and to grow your wealth. I think a lot of people, just me included, think there's only one way of doing it, and that's to start a business and to grow it. But actually acquiring a business that's already had that initial pain and that has evolved and has a good management team in place and is profitable and is at a certain level of turnover, really, you should be focusing on that route, and that's what I'm doing. But having the experience of growing companies organically, of course, helps, because if you acquire the company, there's going to be value that you can add to make the company better. And ultimately, if you're going to do that, our model is to buy a company for a certain multiple, to make it better, to improve it, and sell it for a higher multiple. So to be able to do that, to be able to increase the business, to be able to develop the business, you need to know, and you need to have had that experience, in my opinion, of actually doing it the hard way.
Yeah. And also, like you said, you've got the experience through growing a business organically over 13, 12 years, I think it was, that when you do buy that business, you actually know what you're talking about. Whereas if you go in, I suppose, at day one without ever running a business, it could be a little bit stressful, to say the least. On the acquisition side of things, so to date, have you managed to acquire, or are you close to acquiring any businesses in any sectors at the moment?
Yeah, so going back to when I worked with the mentor, we completed on, I think it was five deals, but that was me being a smaller cog in a bigger wheel. Towards the end of last year, I decided I want to try and do more of that process myself. I'm focusing on two areas. The first one is back in the healthcare space, back in the exact space where I worked before. Obviously, I've got a lot of experience, but what I didn't do the first time was acquire. So we've got 4 deals that are agreed in principle. We've signed heads of terms on 2, and 2 are still in negotiation. So my target is to acquire 5 companies this year in the healthcare space. The other side I am focusing on like technical based services. So a little bit like the facilities management side. Um, and I should be completing on my first deal in that space this week. They are a commercial cleaning company. So by the time by the time we go live with this, that should all be completed. And I've got another couple in the pipeline. So yeah, so the idea, so I've got a partner in the healthcare side, and I've got a partner in the sort of technical based services side. Got some really exciting plans, and that sort of ties into like 2024 is kind of making things happen on a big scale. Taking the learn.
Those are some big goals. Yeah, so five businesses in 1 year. That is, yeah, and I like you said, if you put your mind to it, you already sound like you've got three pretty much on the table with two more to go. And I'm assuming all of these, like you said, they meet your criteria. So they've got already a management team in place. So you won't be in the business. You'll be from a top level, literally taking over and then letting them still manage the business, which is one of the key fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say the business that it's a commercial cleaning company, that they've got so much potential. They're a really good team of people. The owner is fantastic. The existing owner is fantastic. I think I could really accelerate that with my knowledge around sales and marketing. And yeah, trying as much as I can to stay at that sort of strategic level and not get involved in the detail too much.
And that's the next balance, isn't it? It's trying to stay from a distance, but at the same time, almost put your sprinkle on the new business essentially. Yeah. All sounds fantastic. All really, really, really exciting, and obviously, very passionate about that area myself as well. And we're also looking at acquisitions, and it's a fun area to be in, a fun space. Talking about a few things outside of the work-life balance. So I believe you're a big Sunderland fan.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I've supported them all my life, but I got involved in football scouting and recruitment. So there was a period where I couldn't go and watch them play, which wasn't a bad thing, because if anybody's seen someone die, you'll realise that there's been more lows than there is highs. But yeah, Sunderland fan, and at the moment I'm just enjoying being a fan again, because I had like three or so years within scouting and recruitment, and then the agency side. So I couldn't really just be a fan. So I'm enjoying that at the moment. But yeah, football is a massive part of my life. It's always been a massive part of my life. And three boys that I've got have all either played or are still playing football.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm a big football fan as well. But unfortunately, I'll say who I support. I support Swindon. So we've not had the best of times either. We're now 18th in League Two. I think the lowest position we've ever been in. And luckily I'm still a season ticket holder. So when I started in '94, we were in the Premier League. I think it's all on me, to be honest.
Well, I remember the playoff final when Swindon beat Sunderland, but we got promoted because of all of the
financial irregularities by Aussie dealers, I think it was at the time. So.
Yeah. And then the other thing we had Paolo Di Canio in common as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly was a character. But tell us a little bit more about the football agent side of things. Obviously, that sounds, you hear a lot about football agents. Is it as glorious as it sounds? You're doing multi-million-pound deals every other week, or is it a little bit more on a Wednesday night going to Doncaster to scout one player?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the glamorous lifestyle that it portrays. Um, the big agencies, the really big agencies work with the really big players. The smaller agencies just haven't got a chance. And if they do, if they do manage to get a really top player, the big agencies, will be hovering around to swallow them up. So what I did was I decided to use my experience within talent identification, within scouting, and I decided to focus on the younger players, so 16s to 21s, and I had to focus on the players that I thought had potential, using my football recruitment background, but maybe the bigger agencies they weren't on their radar. So I was fairly successful. I managed to sign 3 or 4 good players at scholarship level, and 3 of those actually made it to get professional deals. Wow. Sunderland, Stoke City. So I deem that as a success because I identified the talent. I worked with them players over like a 2 to 3 year period, and I just felt as though the time was right because of my plans within M&A and what I wanted to achieve within my acquisitions and my business side. I felt the time was right to hand that over to somebody else. So that's what I did. A guy I knew in the industry, a guy that I believed in, could take it to that next level. He was also moving from the scouting recruitment. He also used to be involved in loans for a Premier League football club. So he took a couple of the players on, and those players are doing really well. One has just made, I think, 2 or 3 appearances in the first team squad at Sunderland. So that was a nice moment because I signed him on his 16th birthday.
That must be a really, really proud moment. Almost like a bit of a kind of watching your son come onto the pitch at the Stadium of Light.
Yeah. Honestly, it was like when I worked with the players and they hit the various different milestones, getting the professional contracts, playing in the under-21s, it did for me, it felt like they were my own child, my own sons were, and I got the same emotional satisfaction as I did. So, and like I say, I've got a couple of my sons are still playing, so maybe I'll get to experience that again as a dad.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously, the football agent side, how involved are you with the player? Because, I mean, you always hear some, negative press around the agents, just trying to ramp up the value, trying to disturb players. But, are you a pivotal part of their kind of growth as a player? Because, I mean, clubs get rid of players left, right and centre, don't they now? There's not really that kind of community environment about a club where they're going to look after you until you come of age. They're very cut and thrust.
Yeah, I would do. Yeah, you're involved a lot. On the football side, I would watch every single game. So if I couldn't make it in person or one of the games clashed with another players, I would watch it back on video. I would always give some feedback. I would always wish them luck, speak to them on the phone or messenger, like, good luck tonight. I would also help with the emotional side because of the work I did in my business. I think I was able to add some value in terms of, if the players got injured and they had a spell on the sidelines, how to deal with that, how to prepare yourself for coming back. So there's all of that involvement. And of course, once the players got to be in the limelight and successful, then there was the business commercial acumen that I had from growing my own company to negotiating contracts. So, it's a very skilled industry and there's a lot of very, very good people. And this opinion of the agents just come along and make some money from the player, I think people would be very surprised if they knew how much actually time and effort, and they very much deserve what they get.
They almost need a bit of a PR kind of campaign on
Yeah,
football
yeah,
agents. You know, a little bit of like a day in. I mean, there might be some out there, to be honest, a day in the life and what actually goes on. Because, yeah, you often hear from managers and clubs, don't you, that they put them sometimes in a negative light because of, they've either had their best player that's decided to move, so they're a little bit upset about it, or that someone that was playing has now decided that they're going to hand in a transfer request and they're looking for someone to blame. But
yeah,
yeah, really interesting, really interesting. I mean, yeah, there's a lot more to it. You are literally that player's individual mentor, aren't you? Their coach, you're their financial, you're their commercial aspect, you're looking after their interests, you're watching how they perform on a game by game basis as well, and obviously recuperation as well is one of the key things in football. Mentally has got to be the biggest struggle.
yeah, absolutely. And you're the sort of, you've got to knit that relationship between the player's parents, and the club. So you're that middleman, so that you can get some feedback from the club in terms of what they need to do better in terms of their performance. If there's any other elements that you almost need to have a word with them about, you can be that person. So it allows the parents to be parents, and it allows the club to have that close relationship, but also an additional support in terms of managing that player and where they're at. And I think that's what I found really, really helpful, was the clubs that I work with, particularly Sunderland, being a local club. The staff that they brought in, like the academy manager and stuff, were really good to work with, really, really easy to work with. And I can imagine if you're working with people within the clubs that aren't, are not on the same sort of page, and I would imagine the job being a lot more difficult.
Yeah, a more kind of toxic environment potentially as well.
Yeah,
With
but the clubs
if
I work with were excellent, and particularly Sunderland, I have to say.
yeah, excellent. And that's why they're doing a lot better now than I just finished series. I think it's series 2 of the Sunderland
Yeah,
documentary on Netflix, and I love the
yeah,
passion. The passion's amazing, and I've
yeah,
actually been to the Stadium of Light. It was 24 years ago, so it was a while ago. But I remember it very well, and it was a absolutely phenomenal atmosphere.
yeah.
Really, really enjoyed myself. So going back to the business side of things now, what is the kind of one thing that you wish your younger self kind of knew about running a business before you started? Have you got any kind of snippets of wisdom to share with our listeners?
Um, no, I think sticking with the theme of mergers and acquisitions, it opens your mind to what's possible. And I think, you know, leveraging partnerships a bit more, leveraging relationships a bit more. Um, and and yeah, I think there's always an easier route. Like, don't get me wrong, nothing comes easy in this life, but I think if entrepreneurs can maybe consider this a little bit early as part of their scale up plans, the scale up strategy, I think they could get to where they want to be a lot quicker. Like, it took me 11 years, I reckon. If I had, if I, if I knew what I know now, I reckon that journey could have been fast tracked, and probably could have been even more successful and bigger. So yes, there's lots of areas in terms of, leadership, um, how to grow how to grow your company, how to scale it, all of the lessons. There's loads that I could share with people, but I think the number one is opening your mind a little bit to not just getting your head down and trying to grow more customers, win more customers, sell more to existing customers. There's actually another area. If you can educate yourself or get a mentor to come in and teach you the acquisition side. It might just change the dynamics of your business and where you want to go.
I think that's brilliant advice. I mean, I'm on the same train as you are regarding acquisition and mergers is definitely the way to go. And like you said earlier on, I was always under the belief that is something that you have to get to a certain level before you can do, but that is 100% not the case with the right training or right mentor. Going on to kind of education side of things, have you got like a podcast or someone that you kind of listen to regularly that you could kind of recommend for someone that's maybe looking in either the mergers and acquisition space or just in business in general?
Yeah, I think my top three are, there's one called from the British Entrepreneur. I don't know whether you've ever heard of the British Entrepreneur, John Joseph Bourgeois. I love listening to his podcast. He gets some really interesting guests on, but he's got like a really cool and interesting outlook on life. Opened up a lot of avenues for me in terms of understanding money, understanding, investments. He's been good for that. And I joined so he runs like a British Entrepreneurs Club. I joined his club and got to know him personally. So that was good. So I definitely recommend, I'm not just saying that because that's made a big difference to me. I think he's called The British Entrepreneur on YouTube and podcasts. The other one I like listening to is a guy called Matt Haycox. He's involved in finance, but he'd been involved in running businesses in the leisure industry. He had pubs and clubs and actually strip bars, that types of thing. But he's diversified. He's gone through the journey of going into liquidation, rebuilding, and he runs a very, very successful business out in Dubai. Again, I reached out to him when I was in Dubai last time and met up with him for a shisha. I would recommend. That's an interesting one. He does like little snippets of like 3-minute podcasts, but he also does the bigger ones where he's interviewing people, like myself. And then I think the third one's called Strike It Big. Don't know whether you heard of Strike It Big.
I've listened to a few of those. Yeah,
they are. I love them because they're a little bit different. But yeah, I have 12 or 13 on my playlist, and I go for a walk every day. I always do 2 hours, and I listen to podcasts every day whilst I'm out walking, and I make notes. And to be honest, those podcasts are the inspiration of where I come up with my content, because you've probably seen on LinkedIn, I post every day, 8 o'clock. And a lot of my inspiration just comes from listening to other people and just flicking a little switch and going, oh yeah, I can tap into that. I've had that experience. And a lot of my content comes from being inspired by others.
I mean, I love a podcast. Obviously, we're on a podcast now as well. And all three of those are, I think, really, really good recommendations. I've come across and listened to a number of episodes, not all of them, but I've listened to a number of episodes. And yeah, the value that you pick up, I think, from listening to people that have been there and done it is phenomenal, especially when you're either starting your journey or while you're in the middle of it. So yeah, hopefully some of those will be picked up by people in that situation. Lovely. Well, obviously, people that are listening to this podcast, David, how can they find out more information about you?
Yeah, so I think the two main social media platforms is LinkedIn and Instagram. So you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I've obviously got my YouTube channel as well, David Lynch Entrepreneur. But the day-to-day, if anybody wants to reach out, Instagram or LinkedIn is probably the best way of getting in touch.
Fantastic. Brilliant guest, David. Really, really amazing journey and really exciting potential for 2024. some really good learning tips there as well. And I love the education piece as well. 2 hours a day on a podcast. I need to find more time in my life to do that. That's for sure. I've got a dog, but I'm sure she would love to walk 2 hours a day. Just need to find that extra bit of time. But that's brilliant. So yeah, anything more in the pipeline for 24?
No, I mean it's basically it's repeating what I did the first time on a bigger scale in a few different sectors. By the time I'm 50, 44 now, I've set myself a challenge of exiting at least 3 groups. So I'm excited by it. I'm already part of the way through the process. And I'm enjoying it. So let's see if I can achieve what I did before I was 40 at the same time as when I get to 50.
Perfect. I love a goal, and I love the way that you've already got that goal in mind, and that's what you're working to. I have absolutely no doubt that you would do that as well. Well, that's brilliant. So thank you, David, for another episode of We Built This Business. We're on next week with Becky Hopkin from Digital Gearbox. We'll see you then. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please click follow on your podcast platform. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel.